And it's interesting that we got the guy in the White House who was the champion of it for those entire 50 years. I mean, maybe he wasn't in the whole 50 years, but he was in for like 40 plus of them.
Yeah.
And he was the great champion of it. And it's so funny that now he runs on like diversity. Yeah, but I hired the first, vice president who's black or whatever, It's like, yeah, sure. I threw, hundreds of thousands of them in cages, but now look at me. I got one right next to me.
Yeah.
And yes, she's an idiot, but okay.
But it's so funny how Dylan Mulvaney is like the person they all go to, whether it's Bud Light or the president. Like even the president was getting interviewed by Dylan Mulvaney, which is like, what do you why? Like, what is and she's talking about day 300 of womanhood, and Biden's like, bless your heart.
Like, it's so funny. Did you hear the thing where Joe Biden lied and said he was for gay marriage since like the 70s or something like that or whatever
he lies
it was?
All the time.
So he's just making stuff up, but it was so funny because it's because he's just so old, and when old people try to say the politically correct thing, and no matter how they say it, it still comes out like old and wrong. It's just like they're just like, colored people could read just as good as me and you, and you're like, oh, dude, that's the most racist thing. So he goes. He's telling the story of when he was a kid and his dad, and he saw two gay people kiss, and then he goes, and then one of them walked into the bank. Like they had a job just like you or me. Like you're like, yeah, dude, they're people. Like, this was a revelation to you? Like, it still just sounds so fucked up, but he's trying to be cool.
What was the thing that he said something about just like white kids can? He said poor people?
He said poor kids are just as bright as white kids. And you're like, oh my God. Jesus, the Freudian slips. Like, it's like but it's just also like, in the same way that if any of us had like, our 85-year-old grandpa at the table, every now and then if they say some things, you're going to roll your eyes. You're almost like, you can't expect him to be with the times on this. You're like, just stop making Biden talk about this stuff. He's not with but the fact that he has to not only do that, but has to be with the latest woke insanity. Yeah. Like that this guy, like that any man in their 80s has got to be like, oh yeah, Dylan Mulvaney, totally. That's a beautiful woman right there. That's what I'm looking at. Beautiful woman. But he's got to like actually do that is just hilarious.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's really interesting, the mental gymnastics that people will put themselves through.
It's really something.
Just the idea that they're not stopping him from running again. I mean, it's just, you can't.
I'm shocked. I thought they were going to replace him as the nominee at the last minute in 2020. I was shocked he did that, and I was sure he'd be a one-term president, and I'm still now not even convinced he's going to be the nominee in 2024. But the more time goes on, I guess they're actually doing this.
Well, the fascinating thing is they will not allow, for the primaries, they're not going to allow debates.
Oh, they don't want to let RFK on a stage with Biden.
Yeah.
RFK will rip that old man up.
And then imagine if his voice was good.
It's really a shame.
It is a shame.
It's really... The job is really a speaking tour.
Yeah.
And it's a real issue that he has issues speaking, but
he did have surgery recently, and it's better than it was before.
Is it better?
Yeah.
But he's an interesting guy in a lot of ways. And I know people will say, because he was a vaccine skeptic way before the COVID vaccine. He's been a skeptic of vaccines in general. And a lot of people say that's like, oh, this is a conspiracy theory or it's too far. But, that argument after COVID is really much weaker than it used to be. Because people are actually like, yeah, I'm listening now. Yes. Now I'm actually kind of listening to that guy.
It seems like there's a playbook, and you guys have been following this playbook forever.
Yes. And I got his speech, his announcement speech last week. He spoke for over an hour, and I mean, it was really fantastic. I don't agree with everything the guy says, but the major theme of his speech was that there is this unholy alliance of big business and big government, and they're working together to screw over the American people. And damned if anyone can argue that that's not true.
No,
that's just so obviously the case, And he went through this whole thing. He was really great on the stuff on the war in Ukraine and being skeptical about what the hell are we doing here. Really, really great on the COVID stuff, and he's a Kennedy. And he's not just like one of these like, you know, like peripheral Kennedys, like I married a third cousin type Kennedy. Like he's Bobby Kennedy's kid.
Yeah.
There's something powerful about that, even still, I think.
And it's amazing that we've come so far, we're so far gone, that they're not grasping that.
Yeah.
They're not latching onto that. Like, you want a Democratic president, like he could be the guy. But the thing is, they don't want that. They want someone who adheres to the narrative 100% completely, doesn't get off track, is in cahoots with big business and big tech and everything else.
Well, it's just that like the narrative is part of it, but it's the narrative serves the system, you know? So the problem is that he's kind of outside the system, at least to some degree. At least he seems like he is. I don't know. But there's also something to, you know, look, I don't know exactly. In fact, I haven't heard him address it. I'm sure he has, but I don't know exactly where he is on his uncle and his father's, you know, assassinations. But I know that his dad was completely convinced that the JFK assassination was a conspiracy that they weren't telling us about. He did not buy at all into the like Lee Harvey Oswald lone, you know, wolf thing. So it's got to also be, you're a different type of outsider to the system if you believe the CIA killed your uncle. Yeah. That's a little bit different than just, and maybe your dad. Yeah. That's a little bit different than just like, you know, while I disagree with my opponent, I respect his, you know, opinion or something like that. Yeah. That's a real like, no, you understand how evil and corrupt this system is. And that's what makes him an attractive candidate to me. I like people who recognize how evil and corrupt the system is, because it really is both of those things.
And he's got direct connection to it. I mean, it was evil to his family.
Yeah.